Time to run the numbers, and that means business. There's been an economic rebound in the Eurozone in the third quarter of this year. Catherine Bennett from our business desk is here to crunch the numbers. Catherine, what does this mean in terms of recovery?
Well, this is the fastest rate of expansion since records began in 1995. But actually, considering the current context, the record is almost meaningless. The Eurozone saw a jump in GDP of 12.7% in the July-September period, compared with the previous 3 months. But GDP was still 4.3% smaller than it was before the pandemic, so we haven't yet recouped the loss in output caused by the coronavirus. These numbers, of course, refer to the summer as well, when many restrictions had been relaxed and consumers were travelling and spending money. But this fresh wave of restrictions across the Eurozone could pull the region back into contraction in the final quarter of the year. We saw similar record numbers in the US this week, but these jumps are more an indication of just how deep the economy fell this year than an indication of strong and permanent recovery. Spain is one of the countries in the Eurozone that has been harder hit, partly because the country's economy relies so heavily on tourists. Cases of the virus continue to rise in the country, and with more restrictions looming, it looks set to have a more difficult fourth quarter this year. Karis Garland reports.
This food bank in Madrid used to feed about 400 people a month, but since the coronavirus pandemic, more than 3,000 vulnerable people are coming each day. One of them is this mother of 3 children. She says the situation is so tense, her 7-year-old daughter offered her money from her piggy bank.
La verdad que mira, nuestro futuro lo único que queremos es un trabajo estable, vivir en condiciones, no vivir en la situación en la que estamos, sin miedo al va a venir la policía, me va a echar, o me va a llegar una notificación de juicio para decirme qué día y qué hora me van a echar.
Spain's GDP saw a record rise of 16.7% between July and September, but it still puts economic output at 9.4% below pre-pandemic levels. The figures reflect Spain's dependence on the ravaged tourism sector, which accounts for 15% of the economy, more than any Eurozone country. For Conrado Jimenez, head of the Madrina Food Bank, his daily visitors are proof poverty has taken a new profile.
Es gente que son autónomos, que son empresarias, que son presentadoras de televisión, que es gente que está metida en circo, en ocio, tiempo libre. Preveemos que de 3 a 6 meses, si esto continúa así, va a haber un estallido social.
The jump in Spain's third quarter output is being put down to relaxed coronavirus restrictions and the government's furlough scheme. The rebound is set to be short-lived, though, with the country facing a new round of anti-COVID measures. Spain is due to receive 140 billion euros in grants and loans from an EU recovery fund, the most of any country after Italy.
Now let's take a look at global markets. European indices mostly lower at the close on Friday, following losses on Wall Street. The FTSE was down just under the flat line, the DAX also dipping 0.33%, and the CAC 40 up 0.5%. Over on Wall Street, however, indices have ended their worst week since March. Stocks plunged in earlier trading, led by tech shares on the Nasdaq, which is now down 2.5%. Investors are likely also spooked by record coronavirus cases in the US and just days to go until the US presidential election. The Dow Jones dropped 0.5% and the S&P 500 dipped 1.1%. Now for some of the day's business headlines. New travel restrictions and lockdowns in Europe are weighing on airlines. Air France-KLM said on Friday that it will reduce planned flights for the rest of the year and warned investors that its earnings would fall even further. Shares in the airline are down more than 70% this year because of the crisis. Huawei has been knocked from the top spot as the world's biggest smartphone maker, after only being crowned with that title in the second quarter of the year. Samsung has overtaken it with 80.2 million shipments against Huawei's 50.9 million. The UK's data privacy watchdog has fined the Marriott Hotels chain £18.4 million, that's 20.4 million euros, for a data breach back in 2014. That cyber attack was only discovered 4 years later and put the personal information of around 339 million guests globally at risk. The timing could not be worse. Berlin's Brandenburg Airport will finally open tomorrow. And perhaps the date is appropriate because it is a bit of a Halloween nightmare. It's opening almost a decade behind schedule and has gone more than 3 times over budget, to the tune of €4 billion. But that's not even the biggest problem. It's opening in the middle of a pandemic when global tourism and aviation industries are in crisis. This airport is going to have to ask for more funding to get it through the rest of the year, even though a third of its financing has already come from German taxpayers' pockets. And it's starting off with huge debts to repay before even one passenger has stepped foot in the terminal. Which is rather an embarrassing moment for the German government there.
Insult to injury. Catherine Bennett from our business desk, thank you so much for that update.